Welcome, dear listener, to tonight's mystery, a tale woven with whispers, secrets, and the quiet brilliance of deduction. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you never miss another peaceful yet thrilling bedtime mystery. Now, let's begin our story. Chapter 1. Whispers in the Willow Cottage. The autumn leaves swirled like confetti in the crisp breeze of St. Mary Mead, a village where time seemed to dawdle among the thatched roofs and blooming dahlias. Miss Jane Marple, with her bird-like frame bundled in a woolen shawl, sat by her window overlooking the winding lane. Her knitting needles clicked rhythmically, crafting an intricate pattern of cables and twists that mirrored the tangled thoughts in her mind. At 82, her eyes remained as sharp as the pins in her sewing basket, missing nothing of the quiet dramas unfolding in this seemingly serene hamlet. It began with the tolling of the church bell, not the usual midday chime, but a somber peal that cut through the air like a warning. Miss Marple paused, her needles hovering. "Something's amiss," she murmured to herself, setting aside her work and peering out. Down the lane, a cluster of villagers gathered outside Willow Cottage, its wisteria-clad facade now shadowed by urgency. Constable Reed's bicycle leaned against the gate, and Dr. Haydock's motor car idled nearby, its engine huffing impatiently. Curiosity, that gentle prodder of the elderly, urged Miss Marple to her feet. She slipped on her sensible shoes and ventured out, her steps light and unassuming. As she approached, fragments of conversation drifted toward her like smoke from a chimney. "Poor Mrs. Blackthorne," whispered Mrs. Price Ridley, the village busybody, her voice laced with faux sympathy. Found her slumped in the armchair, teacup still in hand. "Heart gave out, they say. But mark my words, that nephew of hers, Reginald, he's been sniffing around her savings like a fox in the hen-house." Miss Marple edged closer, feigning interest in a nearby rosebush. Reginald Blackthorne, Eleanor's only kin, had arrived from London just last week, his sleek automobile a stark contrast to the village's horse-drawn carts. Gossip painted him as a charmer with a penchant for risky investments, always short on funds despite his tailored suits. "And don't forget Reverend Hale," chimed in Dolly Bantry, fanning herself with a lace handkerchief. "He visited her yesterday, arguing about the church fund. Something about a donation she promised, but withdrew. His face was thunderous when he left." The new vicar, Reverend Elias Hale, had blown into St. Mary Mead like a summer squall, charismatic sermons masking a mysterious past. Whispers suggested he'd fled a scandal in the city, though no one dared confirm it. Then there was Miss Lydia Finch, the seamstress, whose sharp tongue rivaled her needles. Lydia was furious with Eleanor over that embroidered altar cloth. Mrs. Price Ridley continued, claimed Eleanor stole her design and passed it off as her own at the fete. They had words, heated ones, in the tea tent last Sunday. Miss Marple absorbed it all, her mind filing away details like cards in a solitaire game. Eleanor Blackthorne, a widow of 75, had lived alone in Willow Cottage since her husband's passing a decade ago. Independent, with a sharp wit and a garden envied by all, she'd seemed the picture of robust health. Heart failure? Possible. But Miss Marple's instincts prickled otherwise. Slipping through the gate amid the dispersing crowd, Miss Marple approached Constable Reed, who tipped his helmet respectfully. "Afternoon, Miss Marple. Tragic business. Dr. Haydock's inside with the body." "Might I pay my respects?" she asked, mildly, her voice carrying the weight of village elder status. Reed nodded. ushering her into the cozy parlor where sunlight filtered through lace curtains, dappling the chintz furniture. Eleanor lay in her favorite armchair, her silver hair neatly pinned, a knitted afghan draped over her lap. The chamomile tea sat on the side table, half drunk, its herbal aroma faint but cloying. Dr. Haydock, a bluff man with a walrus mustache, straightened from his examination. "Natural causes, I'd wager," he said gruffly. "Heart arrhythmia. She was getting on after all." Miss Marple's gaze roamed the room. The open Bible on the ottoman, a vase of fresh asters, and, oddly, a faint smudge on the windowsill as if someone had leaned there recently. "Such a peaceful spot," she remarked. "Did she have visitors yesterday?" Haydock shrugged. The maid mentioned the vicar stopped by. And Reginald, of course. Lydia Finch dropped off mending earlier. As the doctor packed his bag, Miss Marple lingered, her fingers brushing the Bible's pages. Tucked between psalms was a folded note, its edges crisp. She glanced around, no one watching, and unfolded it discreetly. Scrawled in bold ink, "Reveal the truth about the jewels, or face the consequences. Your past catches up." No signature, but the paper smelled faintly of pipe tobacco, a scent she associated with the vicar. Her heart quickened. Jewels? Eleanor had never mentioned such things. Pocketing the note for later perusal, borrowing, not stealing, she assured herself, Miss Marple excused herself and wandered to the garden shed ostensibly to admire the late-blooming chrysanthemums. The shed door creaked open, revealing shelves of pots, tools, and fertilizers. Amid the clutter, a small vial caught her eye, half buried under a trowel. Its label read Digitalis Extract for foxglove propagation. But digitalis in excess could mimic heart failure. And why was it uncapped, a residue staining the rim? "Curious," Miss Marple whispered, replacing it carefully. Foxgloves grew wild in Eleanor's borders, but this concentrated form suggested deliberate use. Poison, perhaps, slipped into the tea. Returning indoors, she encountered the maid, young Betsy, dabbing her eyes in the kitchen. "Oh, Miss Marple, it's awful. Mrs. Blackthorne was fine yesterday morning, laughed at my burnt scones. Tell me about her visitors," Miss Marple coaxed, offering a sympathetic pat. Betsy sniffled. Reverend Hale came first, all smiles, but they argued in the parlor. Something about a old debt. He left in a huff. Then Miss Finch with the mended curtains, snippy as ever, complaining about unpaid bills. And Master Reginald? He was here longest, talking finances, seemed agitated when he departed. Miss Marple nodded, her mind whirring. An old debt? Tied to the cryptic note. She thanked Betsy and stepped out, the village green bustling with market stalls under the afternoon sun. Spotting Reginald near the post office, she approached casually. "My condolences, dear boy. Your aunt was a pillar here." Reginald, tall and slick-haired, forced a smile. "Thank you, Miss Marple. Shocking, isn't it? I was just wiring London about arrangements." His cufflinks glinted, gold, engraved with initials not his own. Borrowed finery. "Did Eleanor seem unwell?" she inquired. "A bit tired, perhaps. We discussed her will. Minor changes." His eyes shifted, avoiding hers. A lie? Miss Marple filed it away. Later, at the church, she found Reverend Hale polishing the brass lectern. "A sad loss," she said softly. Hale's hands paused, his face paling under the stained glass light. "Indeed, Eleanor was generous to the parish. We'll miss her contributions." "Any recent disagreements?" Miss Marple pressed gently. He hesitated. "Merely a misunderstanding over funds, resolved amicably." But his tremor suggested otherwise, and that pipe tobacco scent, stronger here. Dusk fell as Miss Marple returned home, the note burning in her pocket. Unfolding it by lamplight, she pondered the jewels. Wartime rumors? Eleanor had volunteered in London during the Blitz, perhaps more than met the eye. A knock interrupted. Miss Lydia Finch bearing a basket of apples. "Thought you might like these, Miss Marple, from my orchard." "How kind." "I heard you visited Eleanor yesterday." Lydia's lips thinned. "Yes, delivering work. She owed me for alterations, claimed the design was hers. Thieving ideas, that one." Bitterness laced her words, eyes flashing. As Lydia left, Miss Marple sipped her own tea, piecing it together. The vial, the note, the quarrels, not coincidence. Heart failure? No. This was crafted malice, a secret homicide veiled in village normalcy. The church bell tolled again, sealing her resolve. Tomorrow, she'd dig deeper. For now, the whispers in Willow Cottage echoed murder. Chapter 2. Shadows Over. Afternoon tea. The sun dappled the flagstone path in Miss Marple's garden, where climbing roses released their perfume like confidential whispers into the balmy air. It was the day after Eleanor's discovery, and St. Mary Mead buzzed with the subdued energy of a hive sensing an intruder. Miss Marple, ever the orchestrator of subtle revelations, had dispatched handwritten notes that morning, invitations to an impromptu afternoon tea, phrased with the innocence of neighborly condolence. In these trying times, she'd written, a shared cup might ease the burden. No one declined. Curiosity, laced with apprehension, drew them like moths to her blooming haven. By 3 o'clock, the wrought-iron table groaned under platters of feather-light scones, pots of strawberry jam glistening like rubies, and bowls of clotted cream swirled to snowy peaks. A silver teapot steamed gently, flanked by delicate china cups painted with forget-me-nots. Miss Marple, in a lavender frock that blended with the lavender borders, poured with steady hands, her spectacles glinting as she observed the arrivals. First came Reginald Blackthorne, striding up the path with the forced jauntiness of a man masking unease. His shoes, polished to a mirror sheen, crunched the gravel, and he adjusted his silk tie as if it choked him. "Miss Marple, how thoughtful," he said, accepting a seat with a nod. His fingers drummed the tablecloth, a tattoo of impatience, while his eyes scanned the garden as though appraising its value. "Tea, dear Reginald," she offered, her voice a soothing murmur. "Milk first or after?" "After, please. Aunt Eleanor's way." He stirred vigorously, the spoon clinking like a telltale heartbeat. Miss Marple noted the faint ink stain on his cuff, fresh perhaps from hasty correspondence. As he sipped, she steered the conversation deftly. "Your aunt mentioned your recent ventures in the city. Thrilling, I imagine. Stocks and such?" Reginald's cup paused mid-air. "Ah, yes, a few investments. Nothing glamorous." But his flush betrayed more. Miss Marple recalled village talk of casino nights and mounting IOUs. "Actually," he added, leaning in confidentially, "Auntie was considering a loan to tide me over. Generous soul." "Indeed," Miss Marple replied, passing the scones. "Yet I heard whispers of a disagreement, something about her reconsidering." He choked slightly on a crumb. "Nonsense. We parted amicably. I was in London by evening train, dinner with associates, verifiable if needed." His alibi tumbled out too readily, like rehearsed lines in a village play. Before Miss Marple could probe further, Reverend Elias Hale appeared at the gate, his clerical collar stark against the floral backdrop. He moved with the measured grace of one accustomed to pulpits, but his hands clasped a Bible a tad too tightly, knuckles whitening. "Blessings upon this gathering," he intoned, settling opposite Reginald. His eyes, deep-set and shadowed, flicked toward the teapot as if it held serpents. "Reverend, "How kind to join us," Miss Marple said, pouring for him. "Sugar? 1 lump or 2? "None, thank you. Austerity in all things." Yet he accepted a scone, crumbling it absent-mindedly. Miss Marple observed a faint lipstick smudge on his handkerchief. Rose pink, not the shade worn by any village matron she knew. Talk turned to Eleanor's parish involvement. She was a steadfast supporter, Hale said, his voice resonant. Her tithes funded the new vestry windows. But a tremor undermined his poise. Miss Marple tilted her head. "I understand you visited her often. Spiritual guidance, perhaps." He quoted Proverbs smoothly. "The heart knows its own bitterness." Eleanor sought counsel on personal matters. His gaze drifted to the distant church spire, evasive. Personal, like a romance from her youth. Miss Marple ventured mildly, watching his reaction. Hale's teacup rattled in its saucer. Nothing of the sort. Mere reflections on life's fleeting nature. But the denial rang hollow. Miss Marple sensed a forbidden attachment lurking, perhaps with a parishioner beyond the village bounds. Miss Lydia Finch arrived last, her basket swinging like a pendulum, filled with skeins of yarn in vibrant hues. She wore a practical tweed skirt, but her brooch, a silver thimble, caught the light sharply. "Afternoon, all," she said briskly, taking the remaining chair. Her eyes narrowed at Reginald, then softened falsely toward the vicar. "Scone, Miss Finch?" Miss Marple offered, noting Lydia's calloused fingers, marks of endless stitching or nervous picking. "With jam, please." Lydia spread it thickly, her knife scraping like an accusation. The group fell into uneasy chatter about the weather, but Miss Marple guided it back. "Eleanor's passing has left such a void," she sighed. "Her garden parties were legendary. Remember the fete last month? That honey contest? Your entry was divine, Lydia." Lydia preened slightly, wildflower blend, but Eleanor won, as always, claimed her bees produced superior nectar. A bitter edge crept in, though I suspect she sweetened the deal, literally. Reginald interjected, "Auntie had a knack for it. Generous with her winnings, too." The vicar nodded. "Charity begins at home." Miss Marple's ears perked at the honey mention. "Speaking of which, I have a jar from the fete, Eleanor's prize. Shall we sample?" She produced it from a side table, golden and viscous, unscrewing the lid with care. As they tasted, conversation flowed freer, perhaps too free. Reginald boasted of London escapades, but slipped. "Auntie wired funds last week, saved my bacon at the tables." Gambling confirmed. Hale, warming to the tea, confessed, "Eleanor confided in me about a letter from an old flame, stirred old emotions." A forbidden romance. Miss Marple filed it. Lydia, emboldened, griped. "She inherited everything from that uncle, mines in Africa, they say. Promised me a share for my designs, then reneged. Said it was family only. Stolen inheritance? Motive brewed. Amid the talk, Miss Marple excused herself briefly, ostensibly for more cream. In her cottage, she examined the honey jar closer, Eleanor's label, but the seal tampered. A faint residue on the rim, bitter to the tongue. Not honey's natural tang, something acrid, like adulterated sweetness, tainted, perhaps with the digitalis, from the shed. Returning, she spotted something in the dewy grass bordering the path. Footprints, irregular and deep-heeled, not matching the guests' arrivals. One set veered oddly toward her compost heap, as if someone had detoured secretly. Inconsistent with the dry weather, damp from overnight mist, preserving imprints. Whose? Reginald's brogues, Hale's sensible loafers, Lydia's sturdy boots. The tea wound down, tensions simmering like oversteeped leaves. As guests departed, Miss Marple bid farewells, her mind alight. Reginald's alibi cracked under debt's weight. Hale's scripture veiled romantic entanglements. Lydia's excuses stitched a tapestry of envy. Alone, she tidied, but a stray comment from Lydia echoed. Eleanor's desk held all her secrets, wills and what-not. Intrigued, Miss Marple slipped back to Willow Cottage that evening, the key borrowed from Betsy under pretense of fetching a forgotten shawl. The desk drawers yielded ledgers, but one locked compartment, pried gently with a hairpin, revealed a document, Eleanor's will, dated recently. The script flowed elegantly, but the signature looped too perfectly, unlike Eleanor's shaky hand from arthritis. Forged. Beneficiaries: Reginald heavily favored, Hale's church endowed, Lydia cut out entirely. Clutching it, Miss Marple slipped out, shadows lengthening. Betrayal painted clearer, alliances hidden in plain sight. Tomorrow's fare would expose more. Chapter 3. The Veiled Vendetta. Twilight draped St. Mary Mead in a cloak of indigo, the village lanes twisting like forgotten secrets under the emerging stars. Miss Jane Marple, lantern in hand, navigated the cobblestones with the stealth of a shadow, her thoughts a whirlwind of half-formed connections. The forged will from Eleanor's desk weighed heavy in her reticule, its implications gnawing like a persistent draft. Who benefited most from the alterations? Reginald's portion ballooned suspiciously, while Hale's church gained a windfall that screamed hush money. And Lydia, disinherited entirely, her grudge sharpened to a lethal point. Her first stop was the attic of old Mrs. Weatherby, a reclusive spinster whose family had weathered the wars alongside Eleanor's. The climb up the creaky ladder stirred dust motes into a hazy dance, the air thick with the scent of mothballs and yellowed newsprint. Mrs. Weatherby, perched on a trunk like a wizened oracle, squinted through her pince-nez. Jane Marple, at this hour, must be about poor Eleanor. Indeed, Miss Marple replied, settling on a stool amid stacks of memorabilia. Her past, whispers of jewels during the Blitz. Care to illuminate? The old woman's eyes gleamed with relish. Ah, the smuggling caper. Eleanor volunteered at the docks. 41 it was. Ships from Africa docked under blackout, diamonds hidden in cargo for the resistance. But not all reached their mark. Eleanor pocketed a few, they said, to fund her husband's failing business. Turned a tidy profit post-war. Kept it. Hush, hush. But I saw her once, flashing a brooch that screamed contraband. Miss Marple leaned forward. And who else knew? Her circle, tight as a noose. But there was a chap, Elias Hale's kin, brother, I think, lost in the shuffle of evacuation, turned up years later, bitter as bile, claiming she double-crossed him on a share. Vanished again, but mark me, grudges like that don't fade. A brother? Miss Marple's pulse quickened. Hale's evasive scripture at tea now resonated differently. Thanking Mrs. Weatherby with a promise of fresh scones, she descended into the night, her lantern casting elongated phantoms on the hedgerows. Next, she sought whispers from the laundry maid at the vicarage, young Polly, who aired more than linens on her off-hours. Slipping through the back gate under cover of owl hoots, Miss Marple found Polly hanging sheets by moonlight, the fabric billowing like ghosts. "Polly, dear, a word about Reverend Hale?" Miss Marple murmured, offering a peppermint from her pocket. The girl's eyes widened, then narrowed conspiratorially. "He's got a visitor. A strange bloke, calls himself Mr. Thorne, a salesman peddling Bibles door to door. But he's no stranger. Overheard 'em arguin' like brothers. Something about old scores, and Eleanor's hoard. Thorne's got a limp, war wound, he says, and eyes cold as steel. Brothers indeed. disguised, perhaps to sniff out the jewels without rousing suspicion. Miss Marple patted Polly's hand. "You've a keen ear, child. Keep it tuned." Emboldened, Miss Marple ventured to the outskirts, where Lydia Finch's modest shop hunkered amid overgrown brambles. The seamstress was known for late-night stitching, her window aglow with lamplight. Knocking softly, Miss Marple was admitted into a room cluttered with fabrics and patterns, the air humming with the whir of a treadle machine. "Miss Marple, come for fittings at midnight," Lydia quipped, though her needle paused mid-stitch. "Not quite. Your pins, such fine work. Ever use them for more than hems?" Miss Marple asked innocently, eyeing a tray of gleaming needles. Lydia laughed sharply. "If you're implying poison, think again. Though Eleanor's meddling deserved a prick or two. Stole my floral motif for her quilts, sold 'em at market for twice the price." But her defiance cracked. She produced a telegram from her apron. "This arrived yesterday, from Reginald, of all people. Meet at dawn, discuss inheritance." Sneaky, that one. A telegram. Reginald's hand. Miss Marple examined it. Paper cheap, ink smudged. A red herring, perhaps forged to pit them against each other. Curious timing, she mused. Lydia's alibi for the fatal afternoon? Sewing for the squire's wife, witnessed. Solid, but the needles. One bore a sticky residue, herbal, not unlike the tainted honey. As midnight tolled from the distant steeple, Miss Marple pressed on to Eleanor's cottage, now sealed with police tape fluttering like cautionary ribbons. Slipping under it. Elderly. Privilege, she reasoned. She entered the study, her lantern revealing shelves of forgotten tomes. A locked diary caught her eye, bound in faded leather, key nowhere in sight. With a hairpin's twist, old tricks from her school days, she sprung it open. Pages fluttered, revealing Eleanor's elegant script. 1942, diamonds secured, but Elias's brother Victor demands half. Threatens exposure, hid them in the locket, safe for now. Further entries. Victor back, under alias Thorne. Blackmail escalating. Must confide in Hale. The final page, dated days ago. Tea with Thorne tomorrow. End this vendetta. Blackmail over smuggled jewels. Motive crystallized. Thorne, the vicar's brother veiled in salesman's garb, poised for revenge. Heart pounding, Miss Marple pocketed the diary and extinguished her light. But footsteps crunched outside. Heavy, deliberate. She froze as a silhouette loomed at the window. Thorne himself, limp evident, peering in with predatory intent. Ducking behind a curtain, she watched him circle the cottage, muttering curses. "Where's the blasted locket?" he growled, testing the door. Finding it ajar from her entry, he pushed in, his flashlight beam slicing the dark. Miss Marple held her breath, but a floorboard creaked under her shift. Thorne whirled, beam pinning her. "Who's there? Show yourself." No escape. Confrontation loomed. "Mr. Thorne, or should I say Victor Hale?" she called steadily, stepping into the light. "Eleanor's diary paints quite the picture." His face twisted, rugged, scarred from years of bitterness. "Nosy old bat. Those jewels are mine. Eleanor cheated me out of my share. War took everything. She profited. By poisoning her tea. Clever, mimicking a heart attack with digitalis." Miss Marple edged toward the door, her voice calm as a vicar's sermon. He lunged, but she sidestepped nimbly, her lantern swinging to clip his knee. He stumbled, cursing, as she darted outside into the churchyard adjacent, gravestones looming like silent witnesses. Thorne pursued, his limp hindering. "You'll join her," he snarled. But in the moonlight, something glinted on the path. A misplaced glove, monogrammed VH, dropped in haste. Miss Marple scooped it, whirling. "Your glove, sir?" careless for a blackmailer. He halted, eyes widening. That's not... But village lights flickered on. Her cry had roused neighbors. Constable Reed appeared, lantern bobbing. "What's this ruckus?" "Arrest this man," Miss Marple declared, handing the glove. "Evidence of trespass. And worse." Thorne bolted, but Reed's whistle summoned aid. Captured amid the tombs, Thorne spat defiance. "She deserved it. Betrayed me." As dawn hinted on the horizon, Miss Marple retreated, the glove a liar's undoing. Thorne's limp matched the garden footprints, his grudge the note's threat. Yet questions lingered. Accomplices? The fair tomorrow would force hands. The vendetta unveiled, but peril escalated. The killer cornered, desperate. Chapter 4, Echoes of Betrayal Dawn, painted the misty fields of St. Mary Mead in strokes of amber and rose, the air crisp with the promise of the annual fair. Tents sprouted like mushrooms on the green, their striped canopies fluttering against the awakening sky. Laughter from early vendors mingled with the clatter of setup, Ferris wheel creaking into motion, stalls laden with pies and preserves, a merry-go-round's tinny melody weaving through it all. Yet beneath this veneer of jubilation lurked peril, a current as insidious as fog rolling in from the river. Miss Jane Marple, reticule clutched firmly, threaded through the crowds with purposeful grace, her plan a delicate trap baited with festivity. She'd orchestrated invitations subtly, notes slipped under doors at first light, suggesting a chance meeting by the prize tent to honor Eleanor's memory with a communal toast. Reginald arrived first, weaving through jugglers and barkers, his face haggard under the brim of a borrowed fedora. He spotted Miss Marple by a booth of gleaming apples and approached warily. "You summoned us. Feels like a tribunal." "Not at all," she replied serenely, offering him a toffee apple from the stall. "Merely a nod to your aunt's love of fairs. She judged the jams, remember?" Reginald bit into the treat, caramel sticking to his teeth. Fond memories. "But with Thorne in custody, you're doing, I hear. Why drag us here?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled behind her spectacles. "Loose ends, dear boy, like that locket Eleanor always wore. Ever wonder what it held?" He paled, the apple dropping to the grass. "How did you—" "All right, I pinched it from her drawer. Needed quick cash for debts, pawned it in town. But murder, never. I loved her in my way." A confession of theft, not homicide, echoing betrayal's first layer. Miss Marple nodded, pocketing the revelation as Lydia Finch materialized from behind a fortune-teller's caravan, her face flushed from the morning chill. She clutched a ribboned basket of handmade trinkets, eyes darting suspiciously. "Lydia, join us," Miss Marple called. "Reginald was just sharing family tales." Lydia snorted, setting her basket down with a thud. "Family? Eleanor snatched everything, my patterns, my reputation. But worse, she stole Harold from me, back in 45. He was my beau, till she flashed those wartime baubles, married him instead. A jealous rivalry over a lost love, decades simmering." Reginald's jaw dropped. "Uncle Harold, Auntie never mentioned rivals." "Because she buried it," Lydia spat. "I confronted her last week, demanded recompense. She laughed, said time heals, but I didn't kill her, just wished her ill." The Ferris wheel groaned overhead, its lights twinkling like accusatory stars. Reverend Hale approached then, weaving through a troop of Morris dancers, his cassock brushing the dewy turf. His face bore the pallor of sleepless vigil, eyes hollow from Thorne's arrest. "Reverend," Miss Marple greeted, guiding him to the group. "A toast to Eleanor?" She produced a flask of elderflower cordial from her reticule, pouring into paper cups scavenged from a nearby stall. Hale accepted shakily. To absent friends. But his sip was hesitant, gaze flickering to the others. Miss Marple pressed gently. Your brother, Victor Thorne, his grudge ran deep. You forged documents to shield him, didn't you? The parish records, altered to erase his wartime ties. Hale's cup trembled, spilling droplets. How? Yes, I tampered with the ledgers. Victor returned broken, raging about Eleanor's betrayal, the diamonds he helped smuggle only for her to claim them all. I begged her to share, but she refused, forged a deed to give him a stake anonymously. Protection, not malice. Dynamic admissions cascaded. Theft, rivalry, forgery, betrayals echoing like fairground echoes. Yet the core vendetta pulsed stronger, rooted in treachery from fog-shrouded docks long ago. As the group tensed, Miss Marple steered them toward the herbal stall, where bundles of dried plants dangled like talismans. Eleanor's chamomile, she mused, fingering a sachet, but laced with something rarer, monkshood, perhaps. Mimics heartstrain, leaves no trace but a blue tinge to the lips, overlooked in haste. Lydia gasped. Monkshood, from the wild patches by the river, deadly in tea. Reginald nodded grimly. Auntie avoided it, knew the risks from her gardening books. Hale whispered, Victor, he foraged herbs as a boy. Could he have... Miss Marple's mind raced, piecing vivid clues. The locket pawned by Reginald, but what of its contents? She'd retrieved it that morning from the town shop, a discreet exchange for a favor owed. Clicking it open now, hidden in her palm, revealed not jewels, but faded photographs. Eleanor and a young Victor, arms linked by a crate marked confidential, incriminating snapshots of the smuggling operation. Proof of the vendetta, she murmured. Eleanor kept these as leverage, ensuring silence. Victor sought them, and her end. The fair swelled around them, children squealing on rides, a brass band striking up a jaunty tune. But peril sharpened. Miss Marple sensed eyes watching from the crowd. A peripheral figure, the squire's gardener, Mr. Croft, loitered by the ale tent, his boots caked in river mud, a spade slung over his shoulder. Croft, she called softly, drawing the group nearer. You tended Eleanor's borders. Ever harvest monkshood? He stiffened, spade clanging to the ground. What? No, miss, just weeding. Yet his pockets bulged suspiciously. Miss Marple nodded to Constable Reed, who'd shadowed her at her request, blending with the revelers. Perhaps a search, Constable? Reed stepped forward, patting Croft down. From his coat tumbled a vial of blue-tinged powder, monkshood extract, and a crumpled note. Tamper the tea, Croft. Debt cleared. V. Croft crumpled. Thorne blackmailed me. Owed him from cards. Slipped it in when delivering compost. Didn't know it'd kill. Arrest swift as a fairground swindle. Reed cuffing Croft, the crowd parting in hushed awe. A peripheral suspect unmasked for tampering, gratifying, clearing minor veils of complicity. Reginald exhaled relief. Lydia softened with vindication. Hale bowed his head in sorrow. But urgency heightened. The true culprit, Victor Thorne, languished in cells, yet his web spanned wider. Miss Marple clutched the locket's photos, echoes of betrayal resonating. The fair's lights blurred as dusk approached. The final unraveling beckoned in Willow Cottage's glow. Chapter 5. The final unraveling. The hearth in Willow Cottage crackled with a subdued warmth, its flames casting a golden haze over the assembled villagers, who shifted uneasily in the mismatched chairs arranged in a haphazard circle. Dusk had surrendered to evening, the windows framing a velvet sky pricked by early stars, while the scent of polished wood and lingering chamomile hung like a poignant reminder. Miss Jane Marple, poised at the center like a conductor before her orchestra, adjusted her spectacles with deliberate calm. The locket from Eleanor's past dangling from her fingers like a talisman of truth. She'd summoned them here, not with fanfare, but through quiet missives promising closure, transforming the crime scene into a stage for revelation. Constable Reed stood sentinel by the door, his uniform a bastion of authority, while the suspects perched on the edge of anticipation. Reginald, fingers laced in his lap, his borrowed fedora discarded. Lydia, twisting a stray thread from her sleeve. Reverend Hale, Bible clutched like a shield, his collar seeming tighter than before. Even Croft, released on bail pending charges, hovered in the shadows, his gardener's hands dirt-stained from a day's futile labor. No Thorne, yet his absence loomed, a phantom in the room. "Dear friends," Miss Marple began, her voice a gentle brook cutting through stone, "we convene not for recriminations, but for clarity. Eleanor's spirit demands it. This parlor, her sanctuary, now bears witness to the unraveling of a tapestry woven from greed, loss, and long-buried fury." Reginald cleared his throat, his voice edged with impatience. "We've confessed our sins, my pilfering, Lydia's old wounds, Hale's paper tricks, Croft's the tamperer. Isn't Thorne the villain? Locked away, scheming from his cell." Miss Marple smiled faintly, dangling the locket. "Ah, but schemes have architects. This bauble, retrieved from your pawnshop venture, Reginald, holds not mere sentiment but snapshots of deceit. Eleanor and Victor Thorne, crates in hand, docks shrouded in blackout. Proof of their smuggling pact, diamonds bartered for survival amid sirens and rubble." Lydia leaned forward, eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. "So Thorne poisoned her to claim the gems. But where are they now? Not in that locket." "Precisely," Miss Marple replied, clicking it shut with a snap that echoed. "The jewels vanished long ago, sold, piecemeal, to fund Eleanor's quiet life. But Victor believed otherwise, his wartime scar twisting into obsession. He returned as Thorne, the Bible peddler, peddling not salvation, but extortion." Reverend Hale's Bible thumped to the floor, pages splaying like accusations. "My brother, he confided his rage, but I thought words, not deeds. I altered records to bury his name, shield the family shame. But murder, God forgive us." Miss Marple paced slowly, her steps measured against the ticking mantel clock. Forgiveness follows truth. Victor's sympathy visit, under guise of sales, afforded opportunity. But alone? No. Echoes of betrayal ripple wider. Croft shifted, his boots scraping the rug. I admitted the monk's hood, slipped in the compost tea she brewed. Thorne's note promised debt erasure, but I diluted it. Thought it'd sicken, not slay. A gasp rippled through the room. Reginald bolted upright. "Diluted? Then how?" "Layers, dear boy," Miss Marple interjected, producing a small envelope from her reticule. "This, scrapings from Eleanor's teapot, analyzed discreetly by Dr. Haydock's lab contact. Monk's hood traces, yes, but amplified by another toxin. Belladonna, from the nightshade in her borders. Subtle synergy. Monk's hood weakens the heart. Belladonna masks the symptoms as arrhythmia." Lydia's thread snapped in her fingers. "Nightshade. I prune those. Eleanor asked me to tend her wild patches last month, but I wore gloves, never touched the brew." Hale's face drained of color. "Victor knew herbs from our boyhood rambles. He must have doubled the dose during his call." Miss Marple halted by the window, starlight illuminating her profile. "Indeed. But consider the teacup's position. Right-handed Eleanor, yet residue heavier on the left rim, as if poured by a southpaw. Victor's war wound favored his left. And the belladonna, harvested fresh, berries crushed into the leaves he gifted as a peace offering. Reginald rubbed his temples. But motive beyond jewels. The photos prove partnership. Why kill? Ah, the cascade of twists, Miss Marple murmured, unfolding a yellowed telegram from her envelope. This, intercepted from Victor's lodgings, wired from Africa. 42. Shipment intercepted. Eleanor tipped authorities. Your share seized. A forgery? No. Eleanor's diary hints at regret. Victor too greedy. Alerted customs to save us both. She betrayed him to prevent capture, costing his freedom. Imprisoned briefly for smuggling ties. He emerged vengeful, fortune lost, life fractured. Lydia whispered, so the sympathy was a ruse. He laced the gift, watched her sip, then fled. Croft nodded grimly. Explains his insistence on the dose, said it'd settle scores softly. I was the pawn. Hale rose, voice breaking. I suspected his darkness, but blood binds. When he confessed the plan, I tried dissuading, forged a truce letter in Eleanor's name. Too late. Miss Marple's gaze softened. Blood indeed, but justice unties knots. Victor's grudge, buried in wartime rubble, unearthed here, administered via tainted leaves during that fateful visit. The door burst open then. Reed ushering in Victor Thorne, shackled and defiant, his limp pronounced under the constable's grip. Brought him for confrontation as you requested, Miss Marple. Thorne's eyes blazed, scars twisting in the firelight. Meddling crone. Those diamonds were my due. Eleanor promised halves. Then she rats me out, pockets the lot. Years in a cell scraping by while she sips tea in comfort. Reginald confronted him. You killed her for ghosts. The gems were gone, sold for her cottage, her life. Thorne laughed bitterly. Ghosts? She taunted me with the locket, said the photos were her insurance. I demanded them. She refused. So I gifted the leaves. Belladonna brew, subtle as her betrayal. Watched her weaken, then slipped away. Lydia stood, voice steel. And Croft? Your errand boy for the Monkshood lair? A backup, Thorne sneered. Debts make loyal fools. Hale approached his brother, tears streaking. Victor, why drag me in? The forgeries I did for love. Love? You preached forgiveness while I rotted. Needed your pulpit to spy. Eleanor's confessions spilled to you. Miss Marple interposed. Psyches laid bare. Greed devours Reginald. Jealousy poisons Lydia. Protection blinds Hale. Coercion ensnares Croft. But Victor's vendetta crowns it. Wartime echo, fatal in a teacup. Reed tightened the cuffs. Enough! You're for the gallows, Thorne. As Thorne was led out snarling oaths, the room exhaled. Reginald slumped. Auntie's secrets. We'll honor her properly now. Lydia nodded. I'll stitch a memorial quilt. Her designs, mine blended. Hale retrieved his Bible. A service tomorrow, redemption for all. Croft muttered gratitude. I'll tend the gardens free, penance. Miss Marple retreated to the hearth, flames dying to embers. Justice served, echoes silenced. St. Mary Mead endures. Outside, the village slumbered, tranquility restored. No loose threads, only the warm glow of mystery mastered.